can.
Oh, there I am.
All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. This is a publicly noticed meeting with the express purpose of going through the candidates for city manager for Westlake. The city council had requested assistance from the senior advisors. We actually do have a council member online, and our purpose today is to go through the candidates and determine who we want, which candidates, and how we want to recommend to the city council. Ken Parker is online, and Jim Hansen. Kim and Jim, would you each give a little for the council member, for Odette and Zoe, the staff members, just a little tiny background?
Okay, I'll be glad to go first. I'm a senior advisor working with the ICMA and Florida City County Manager Association. Worked in 4 communities as a manager for over 41 years. I've been retired now for 8 years. And as a retired manager, I have the ability to work as a senior advisor. I've done specifically, I think, just about 24 recruitments for the smaller communities since I've been a senior advisor, and among other responsibilities.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Ken Parker. I'm been a senior advisor now for 10 years, and I've been retired 13. I served in 3 separate communities. My last community was for 28 and a half years. I've served on the ICMA executive board and also on the FCCMA board.
Thanks, Ken. And I'm Russ Blackburn. Most recently was the city manager of Port St. Lucie. I was the manager of Gainesville, Martin County, and an assistant in a plethora of places, it seemed. And I've been a senior advisor for 2 years and retired for about 2.5 years. And very pleased to offer assistance to Westlake. I think it's a great city, and we're going to hopefully help the council to look at the applications and be able to pick a manager that will lead them into the future. So Jim and Ken, we've not had a chance to get together because of the public records as far as how we're going to proceed in our process. I'm here in Westlake. You're virtual, but we're all serving together on this review panel. So I would suggest that we go through the candidates. Odette, the clerk, has a listing of the candidates that are alphabetized, and maybe we can, just a suggestion, we can let Odette call out the candidate. We can look at our review of those candidates. What I have done as an example, which was something that Ken and I had done on previous recruitment, is grouped the candidates into the candidates that are qualified and most closely match all of the requirements of the job description, anything that was relayed during the meeting with council. And then the next grouping was the candidates that are qualified, but may not have all of the requirements that were identified by council or the job description. And an example of that might be the council's job description asks for 10 years of progressive local government experience and experience as a manager, and particularly in Florida. And a candidate might have 8 years. So I would have grouped them into they're qualified, but they don't meet all the requirements. And in the third grouping was those folks who, based on their resume for this job, would not appear to be qualified. They may be qualified for lots of other jobs, but may not have the experience as a manager or experience in progressively working their way up through a city or a county. So how does that sound if we kind of look at those three groupings and identify each candidate and where you would place those candidates based on the groupings? And then we can talk through if there's one of us has someone who's qualified and we believe meets all the requirements and two of us don't, we can talk through those issues. Does it change somebody's mind? Ultimately, I think we want to get to a point where we're providing the most qualified grouping that meets all the requirements to the council. Council ultimately can select between any of the three groups, but certainly we would expect that with our experience, certainly between the top two groups, that would be your most appropriate candidates. So let me pause there and get any feedback.
Russ, I'd like to suggest that in my experience, not all candidates that are qualified and meet all of the qualifications are necessarily candidates that I would feel comfortable for a elected body looking at. There are some things other than just the minimum qualifications that I would think might come to our attention. Just as an example, if we had a manager that an applicant, let's say they've had 10 jobs in the last 10 years, and you'd say, hold it, why did they have to keep changing jobs? There's something very seriously concerning about this. Or if they had an ethics violation, say ICMA ethics, if they resigned from a job with less than 2 years of service, then to me that would imply that there's a problem. So those are just a couple of examples, not necessarily related to anybody that we'll be looking at this morning. But I think there's more than just meeting the minimum qualifications that I think an elected body would want us to review and give our opinion on. So some of these, what I've done, a lot of them in the past is like a qualified and recommended group, and then a group that's qualified or close to qualified, and then everybody else, which clearly not qualified people.
Yeah, Jim, I think those issues will sort out as we go through, and each of us will have reasons why we put somebody in from our perception into the group. And if we see that a candidate that would appear to be qualified but didn't have and have met all of the requirements, but didn't show up in an individual's assessment, then that would be a good discussion topic. We do, I think, want to recognize that people are entitled to give additional information. We have not conducted any background checks, and I think that's very important. And Jim was nice enough to forward me a draft letter that he has used in other cities and county recruitments, and I've modified it a little bit specifically for Westlake. But ultimately, one of the big themes of that letter is strongly encouraging the city of Westlake Council to have, we call it, get to a semifinalist group and then direct or authorize background checks on each of those candidates before they reach a decision of who to interview. Because we don't conduct background checks. Each of us may know people in the group that applied. We can Google them and certainly things, but But that's not the whole answer sometimes. Sometimes there's a good reason why somebody left after a year that, you know, we don't know. And so, you know, I think we're kind of on the same direction, but it'll sort out as we go through our candidates, I believe.
Okay.
But, Ken, what's your, are you good with looking at the groups and then going back and talking about, is there some reason why somebody didn't show up on a group? And I think that's where Jim would be.
Okay, let me just say one thing. When I was putting together my list, okay, you know, the first category was qualified and meets qualifications. The second one, qualified, meets some of the qualifications. And the third category is, I didn't look at it that they don't meet the qualifications. I looked at it from the perspective not recommended. Just from the standpoint of, you know, you can get into that argument if they are qualified or not qualified. From my perspective, I was just looking at not recommended. So that was kind of how I put the three categories together. Because ultimately it's the city council that has to make the decision over qualifications. And
Yeah.
all I'm looking at is their resume. And of course, you know, all of us who have done this a while may have seen some of these candidates before. Just for a frame of reference, when I was looking at each of the categories, okay, I have 6 candidates that would fall, in my opinion, in that first category. I had 7 in that second category, and the remainder were in that third category. So that kind of gives you kind of my, you know, kind of the big overview of how I see them falling out. And I'm prepared to us have that discussion.
I think we're all very close. And so as we get to that third category, we can talk through the nomenclature that we want to use and providing our overall recommendation to council. So if y'all are agreeable, let's go ahead and get started. You don't have this, I don't think. Dan and I do. So we're our first candidate, and say they're all alphabetized, is Emmanuel O'Dearin.
Okay, I have him in the second group, and my major concerns with short tenure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. Jim, where did you have Emmanuel?
I did not think he met the qualifications. He, in terms of, let's see, he was city manager of College Park, Georgia for 2 years, 14,000 population. He's had a lot of employers, but the great majority of that work is in public works. So, also his education is not in anything related to city management. It's science, biology. He's a doctor of ministry. I don't think he met the qualifications for management experience, top management as a city manager or assistant in terms of time.
Okay, all right. And I had him in the qualified, but does not meet the position requirements. Great. Our next candidate is Deidre Boykin.
I had her in the last category. She has sales experience in the media area.
All right.
I agree. She doesn't remotely meet the qualifications.
All right, and I had her in that does not meet the position requirements. See, we use a little bit different language, but we end up in the same place.
Yep.
All right, Howard Brown.
Right. I think he meets the qualifications. Has had, however, this one raises a red flag to me, and the number of jobs he's had. 9 employers in 15 and a half years in his showing his resume, which is less than 2 years per job. And that certainly gives me some great hesitation to wonder about why he can't hold down or won't hold down a job or stay in a job for any longer than he has.
I mean, did you have him in your qualified meets all requirements or qualified but doesn't meet?
I think he meets the requirements for years as a city manager. So yeah, this is one I'd say that they clearly meet all the requirements, but personally, I would not recommend him to an elected body as one of the top candidates.
Okay, I had Howard over in that second category. He's had some very difficult cities. He's worked in some very difficult cities. When you look at his resume,
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are some good cities that he's been in, and he's currently serving as the interim over at Fort Meade. And when you look at his resume, he's got a lot of Florida experience. So, but my major concerns are the short tenure, and I don't think in this particular city for a first city manager, they need an individual that's had more stability.
Yeah.
So you got him in the qualified but does not meet all requirements. And we don't have to say why. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. He's in that second grouping based on your assessment, Kenny.
Right.
Okay. All right. And I had him in the qualified meets all requirements, and I kind of have taken a little bit different perspective that if the council will do the background checks, some of the things that I might be concerned about will show up, and the council will be able to see that on your own. But I definitely hear what you're saying.
Well, I think that we are all saying the same thing. He meets the criteria of number one, and we just have some concerns.
Yeah.
As a city manager mine is a city manager for the first city manager that a council is selecting. That's my concern.
Yes. Well, I absolutely agree with you, and I think we would all anticipate that and hope that Westlake starts out with a bang with a really really good, competent manager. All right, our next candidate is Ramsey Buckley.
Okay. I don't think they meet the requirements myself. They've not been an assistant or a manager anywhere. Their experience has been a department head in Palm Beach County, 1.5 million population. Basically, they've done a lot of planning and zoning work, but I just don't see them having the minimum qualifications as a manager.
Well, if they want an attorney, he has the degree. He's a degreed attorney.
Yeah, JD. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I have him like Jim. That's where I have him.
I had him in the qualified, but does not meet the position requirements. When you look at the 10 years of progressive responsibility in the organization, he was 10 years in Palm Beach County, and worked from the zoning administrator up to the director of planning, zoning, and building, which is bigger than most cities. But he's never been a city manager, never been a county manager. He has managed large groups of people and large budgets. So I had him in the qualified, but does not meet. And
I don't have a problem with that one, putting him in that category.
so you would put him in that second category, Ken?
Yeah, that second category. I don't have a problem with that.
All right, our next candidate is Levandre Camel.
Okay, my take is this applicant ought to be in the top group. Manager of South Bay, Florida, 5,000 population for 12 years. He's got a master's degree in public administration. So I think this is someone they ought to be looking at.
I concur with that one. She was one of my top candidates when I was going through and looking, saying I think that she meets the qualifications.
And I had Levandre as well in my group for meets all the requirements. All right, Brandon Carter.
Okay, I don't see any manager or assistant experience in the resume. They've got some finance. They were finance director at Lake City, South Carolina. That's about it. I mean, they've got some finance experience, but I think Westlake's looking for somebody with broader experience and management experience, and I don't see any of that in this application.
I concur with that.
And so did I. So we're unanimous. That one is placed in the does not meet requirements, also known as not recommended.
Yeah.
All right, our next candidate is Peggy Castano.
All right, I think that this application is one that they should look at. She's been an assistant manager in Lauderdale Lakes, 37,000 population with obviously Florida experience, done some grants management and that sort of thing. I'm not sure that it quite meets the progressively responsible criteria, but I'm thinking this is one of the stronger resumes in this group that we're looking at.
She was in my top group.
Right, so Jim, you have the meets all the requirements, and then the second grouping is qualified but doesn't meet all the requirements. Would you put her in your second group or your first group?
I would probably argue to be in the first group. Particularly with I've got a concern that of course I'm tougher on candidates than most evaluators. You probably could tell. I don't see enough top candidates that as per my ranking, so I would think she would be in the top group.
Okay, I'm gonna just put a parentheses around her as we're going, because I think if we're looking at a recommended group, for me, yes, but if I'm just looking at the resume and experience, I put her in the second.
Yeah, that's about the way I'd look at it. Plus, yeah.
Right. Robert Curnow.
Well, he's got a master's degree, worked in Peachtree City, Georgia, 38,000. 1 year, deputy city manager, assistant city manager, Coral Springs, 4 years, mostly management of technology, managed budgets, and that sort of thing. He did resign after from his slot as a city manager after 1 year, but he has been an ICMA member since 2017. That'd be one of those that I guess somebody ought to look into, because unless there is a really strong reason, as we all know, resigning with less than 2 years experience, unless you've got a very strong reason, would be a violation of our ethics code. So I didn't do a lot of background work on this this particular one. So um, I think I would put them in the second group because they've only got 4 years as a manager or assistant. Um, but that issue about the resignation is something that ought to be checked in a background check.
Ken?
Okay, I had him in my first group, but I did make a note, he is extremely talented in the IT area. So that kind of puts, even though he has served as a deputy city manager and some of those items, uh, you know, I guess the question is how broad is his experience when he was a deputy?
Mm-hmm.
But I had him in my top group to take a further look at him.
Okay, all right. And I had him in my second group. I did note that he hadn't, he left after 15 months at Peachtree City. But prior to that, he had, good experience, progressive in multiple organizations, and some top organizations. I did Google him, which means nothing, but there was a lot of conversation about he supposedly had some family emergency and had to leave Peachtree City. The comments from the council members were all positive. But that's why I think it's just really very important that the council authorize prior to making a decision on their interview field background checks. And that's the kind of stuff that the background check we would hope would identify. All right. Michael Glendale.
I didn't see that he met the qualifications.
I agree. He only worked as an attorney for 21 years and as a police lieutenant and a detective for 6 years before that. So I don't think he has the base of experience to say that he's qualified.
And we have a winner. All three of us reached the same decision. All right, Jason Goldstein.
Let's see, he's got an MPA degree. The only municipal experience is an assistant village manager in Maryland for 3 years, and that city's 5.4 thousand. He's got some experience managing the planning and development of a small community. But I wouldn't think he meets the years requirements, years required. So I wouldn't think he's qualified.
Ken?
I noted that he had the assistant experience, and he does have some contract management experience. I noted that. So, but I didn't put him in the first category. I didn't think he met those requirements.
Did you have him in your second category, second grouping? Or Ken, did you have him in your?
I had him in the third category.
Okay. All right, as I did as well.
Okay.
And if we were looking for somebody with international experience, not necessarily for a city manager, he would be good. He's got, working for the United Nations, contract
Sometimes
management for a city.
Russ, I have to look through the lens of my son, who also has a lot of international experience in the types of things that he was doing. But in this case, I didn't see that it was direct. I thought the 3 years, but I'd like to have more information about exactly what is, Jason was over. What does he, how did he translate, into moving over from that sector over into a city sector? Because as you know, some assistants are not given line supervisory authority.
Right.
So that was my concern. That's where I put him out there in that third category.
And I think we were unanimous on that. All right, George Dickens III.
I have him in my third category. If I was looking for a fire chief, I'd like him.
Yeah, me too. It's all the experiences in the fire department or as a private inspector, and that just does not meet requirements of this job.
And I also put him in the third category. Michael Jackson.
All right, he's got I think he's got an MPA, although it's from Florida Agricultural and Mechanical, which is rather strange. He has some city manager experience. He did resign after a year and a half, but it was in Pahokee, and that's, as we all know, got a strong reputation for some problems. So I wouldn't necessarily hold that against him. He's managed budgets. He's got some zoning and economic development experience. He has the only thing I noticed, he's had several different career choices listed in his resume. So it's almost like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But I would certainly think he's qualified. He's just got an interesting resume.
Okay. So Jim, would you put him in the first?
My concern was I'm not sure he's a good fit. I had him in my second category because of the Florida experience, but I'm not necessarily sure that, as a first city manager, and I know they've had contract managers, but as the first truly professional city manager, and I'm just not sure this is a good fit for him.
Yeah.
And I had him in my qualified meets all position requirements. Pahokee, 17 months in Pahokee, 5 years in South Bay.
Yeah.
And then looked like 20 years in South Florida Water Management District as the Broward Division Director. So I had him in my my qualified meets all the requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mark Cutney.
Okay, MPA degree, city manager, town manager for 2 cities in Florida, population 9,000 and 3,000, total of 7.5 years. He has got an ICMA credential. He was terminated from his last job. I looked that up, but that, as we all know, that you don't necessarily hold that against somebody, that particularly in this day and time. But I think he meets the qualifications.
Yeah, that's where I had him.
All right. And I did as well. I was an interesting, his last termination, it sounded like he was, the council generally liked him. There was a sale of a piece of property accidentally. That was an incorrect title review, and I have a hard time holding him totally accountable for that. There's lots of people who get involved in a property sale, but it was, I guess, embarrassing, and he ended up being terminated. But he had lots of experience before that in multiple years, and so I had him in my up category.
We've all made mistakes before unwittingly, but
yes, that's right. That was an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Horace McHugh.
Let me say first, Horace called me this morning to say that he was looking at another job, and he wanted us to know that that it's possible that he may take the other job in the next week or two. He wasn't sure yet, but I wanted to disclose that publicly. But I've known Horace for many years personally. He's got a lot of experience, and in fact, I know he has not wanted to move out of the area, and that's probably why he hasn't gone on to his next job already. I think he's very qualified, and frankly, I think if Westlake could get him, I think they'd be doing very well. So personally, I'd put him as a top candidate real quickly.
Yeah, that's where I have Horace in that particular category.
And I did speak to Horace as well. And, he hasn't taken another job. So until he does, he's in my top group. And it'd be nice if we were moving fast enough that Westlake Council could hear him. But I don't know how that will work, but I have him in my top group as well.
This is an example of what I've mentioned to a lot of elected groups when they receive our recommendations, in that they need to move quickly, because most of these candidates are looking at other jobs also, and certainly the best of them will get hired quicker than the least qualified. So it's not at all unusual to have top candidates drop out from contention before an elected body can interview them and make an offer. So that's why we urge them to move quickly once they have our recommendations, and make their decisions, because the candidate pool didn't get any bigger. It can only get smaller by these folks dropping out.
Yeah. And in the transmittal memo that you drafted, Jim, and I'm providing to them, we clearly mentioned that it is important that the council will go forward, get their background checks, and then quickly do interviews, because typically the candidates you lose are your better candidates, because they got multiple options and alternatives. And it's difficult now, and this is a good job. We only had 19 applicants, which a number are not qualified. And so it's important the council move fast to try to nail their candidate down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Charles Morris.
All right, this one, I've got some serious heartburn on. He does have an MBA. He's got considerable, some city manager experience. However, his resume is not accurate. He submitted it, as I was looking it up for just very quickly, that he shows himself currently being employed as a city manager, and he was fired over a month before he submitted the application. So I think the application that he submitted is inaccurate, and I would guess intentionally. So it would be hard for me to imagine accidentally submitting a resume and claiming I was still employed when I've been out of a job for a month. So I got a real heartburn with that. Also, he's got no Florida experience. So this is an example that he may meet the minimum years, but I could not bring myself to recommend him to a council.
Would you put him in your last grouping?
I would. I can call the last group not recommended. But yeah, I would definitely not think the elected body of Westlake ought to be spending time with this candidate.
Okay.
My comment was I've got him in the third category, but if the council decides they want to look at him, I would suggest they look real deep.
Yeah.
All right, and I had him in the second category again. Not everything I recommend is do your background checks. All right, Nelson Armani.
Okay, he's got a master's degree in business, but all of his work has been in the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps since 2015. He's basically got no municipal experience. I don't think he's remotely qualified for this job.
I have him in my third category. Okay. I didn't see, even in his military background, uh, that, things like was he a base commander or things like that? I didn't see any of that.
Mhm.
I agree with both of you. He's in my third category as well. All right, Rick Stang.
All right, he does have an MPA, but all of his work's been in police departments, from officer up to captain. So it's progressively responsible, but no work in municipal management overall. Um, I don't think he's qualified.
No, I just made a notation. I don't know if you looked at the resume, but I would sure like to have had an interpretation of resume. I looked at the very beginning. It looked like it was not in English.
Oh,
Yeah,
I believe that's just kind of the gibberish for filling in something
Yeah.
at a later. There's a word for it. I don't remember it. But I have him in my third group as well.
Well, that to me shows the lack of attention to detail.
Yes, yes, it does. Larry Tibbs.
Okay, I think this ought to be one of the top candidates. He's got a master's in business. Let's see. He was the first city manager in Moore Haven, Florida, community 1.7 thousand for 4 years, and assistant city manager in Belglade, city of 19,000 for 5 years. Talks about several grants he's managed. He's done 5-year planning, some extensive tax work, a lot of economic development work, and worked in the housing boom in Palm Bay as part of his mentioned in his resume, I think, and he lives close. So I think, to me, this would be one of your top candidates.
Right. I've got where I had him. Strong background. He's got city manager and finance background, which I think works well for a brand new city manager, first city manager.
Mhm.
Right, and I had him in my second grouping, only because he only been a manager for 4 years. But he has had, he was an assistant for 5 years in Belglade, and then he had career military. So he has good experience. I could easily move him into the top group as well. So I'll put a parentheses around him for my own. All right, Chandler Williamson.
I don't think we'd even need to discuss Chandler.
Yeah, he spent 6 years as a manager of Pahokee, but if you look at the article about his leaving, it is very bad. He was accused of a lot of things, and apparently there was a lawsuit, and it just, it was not good. This is one where they may meet the requirements, but I certainly would not recommend them as a candidate.
That was where I'm at too. Is I see him I put him in my third category.
I have him in my first category, but he's also one clearly the background checks will give enough information, I think, for council to decide whether to interview him or not. All right. If we look at our meets all of the requirements grouping with at least 2 people, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's what Ken said earlier. I come up with 6 that we have.
Could you call them out just so I can have them on my notes?
Sure. Howard Brown, Lavondre Camel, Peggy Castano, Michael Jackson, Mark Cutney, Horace McHugh, and Larry Tibbs. Those all have 2 or more of us. I noted earlier that Larry Tibbs looked good to me. He just didn't technically meet all the requirements.
Yep.
Because of only 4 years as a manager. And so then if you look at your qualified but does not meet all the requirements, I looked for 2 or more. It's Emmanuel Adrian, MC Buckley, Robert Cano, and that's it. So, and then everybody else would technically not meet the requirements, probably fall into that not recommended group. We put that as our last category versus doesn't meet requirements, so not recommended.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How did we handle Peggy?
She is in the qualified meets all requirements. Although I did not have her meeting all requirements personally, but you and Jim, I think, did put her in that group.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over that list one more time, that is in the the first category.
All right, Howard Brown,
Okay,
Leandre Camel, Peggy Castano,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson, Mark Cutney, Horace McHugh, and Larry Tibbs.
okay. All right. I'm fine with that list.
I'm good.
I'm fine with the second.
Yep. I'm okay with it.
I guess it's 7 and it meets all requirements.
And that's a fair number. If they have 1 or even 2 to drop out through, or maybe even 3 through the either before they get to interviews or they drop them out because of background checks, that'll leave them a sufficient number of well-qualified candidates to consider during the interviews. And I think, again, they need to move quickly and minimize the number that drop out.
Yeah. So in the memo that I've drafted for the council, that what I've recommended basically as next steps is that each individual council member choose 7 candidates that they would like to discuss in a collective meeting with council. And if the council choose 7 to 10 for their semifinalist to ask for background checks.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get the background checks, then choose their interview field. And I recommended for that field, they include 2 alternates to reflect that they'll have people drop out.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
Sure. Yeah, it depends on the number that how they come out. That after background checks and all that, it may be very clear that there's only X number, or maybe there's 1 good alternate, maybe there's 3 good alternates. It just depends on how the information comes back to them when they get the checks done.
Well, in the first category, we have 6, I think, candidates. 7 candidates, but then you have 3, I believe, in the next category. So they could choose within both of those categories if they could come up with 7 candidates, and they could come up with less, but no more than 7, and then come together as a council and pick their interview field. I think there's a field there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I never recommend interviewing more than 5 because it's hard to keep track of them. And even with that, for a council, as you and I have mentioned before, we recommend they ask the same questions of each applicant, because I've seen councils that just pick and choose the questions whenever the applicant comes in, and they're asking different questions of different applicants, and then they're all done and they say, oh no, we forgot to ask such and such about this, about finance, or about this question or that one. It's good for them to use the same questions. Another thing that has been helpful in some cases is to give each elected official a list of the questions they're going to ask, one list for each candidate, and have them score them themselves. So Councilmember Smith may score candidate number one, give him a 1 out of 5 on this question, and so forth, and do a fresh sheet for each candidate. And then what we've wound up doing as senior advisors is grabbing those tabulations and giving them their scoring, give all their questionnaires back to them by the time they start discussing with the other elected officials. But that gives them a starting point, because they'll say, okay, here, your notes for this candidate, you scored them highest versus this candidate and this candidate. And it starts the discussion. Not that they necessarily choose the one that happen to have the highest scores, but it helps them kind of consolidate their thoughts, I guess, on candidates. So that's one option we've used in some cities in the past that seems to be helpful.
So I've been asked to provide some sample questions. What I have found, because we're all under the Public Information Act, I'm going to recommend to the council that that will provide these questions, but provide them to the city attorney. That way the attorney can keep them confidential until the day of the actual interviews.
And we do have an interpretation on that it is considered a test under the Sunshine Law, so it is not something that can be given out prior to the interview.
Yes. Okay. That's good, Jim. Yeah. I hadn't gone that far, but it is, that's something that in the Fellsmere recruitment, the attorney did. He provided the questions to the council, got their input, but they were all, under the attorney's privileged information, and were provided. And yes, Jim, we recommend that they ask all the applicants the same questions, and we'll see, kind of at our next step what the council needs from us as senior advisors. But I think we've got a grouping that meets all the requirements that we recommend. We've got a grouping that doesn't meet all the requirements, but we have at least 3 candidates that they can consider out of that grouping. And then all of the other candidates were not recommended. Would that be a consensus?
Yes, I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Odette and Zoe, this is our acting city manager, Zoe. Anything that you need from the senior advisors at this point? I will put these groupings and this recommended groupings in a memo to council that I will email you today. So you'll have that to provide to council. Is there anything that you need from us? And Zoe's mute.
Not at this time, thank you.
I do have, and I'll give it to Odette, a list of at least 3 groups that do background checks. And we can get more, but you probably can as well. So again, most important thing coming out of this is, we've identified people because of, based on their resumes and what they told us, it's possible, and Jim mentioned on a candidate that they didn't tell us everything. That's why the background checks are so important. I see we have Greg, one of the council members on line. Sure, he's hearing that. Let's say that several times. You have to do the background checks because we're not investigators. We're experienced managers who are here to help. But you need someone who is an experienced investigator to do the background checks and provide that information to you, to the council, so that the council has all the information in making their decisions to ultimately to enter. All right, well, Kim and Jim, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to review the applications. It helps the city, and Odette's been taking great notes here. And but I'll also chronicle it and put it in the memo that we sent to council. So Jim, it's very close to the memo you sent me, but I've tailored it to Westlake.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry that I'm standing in a dish room where people wash dishes. So, and there you've heard a lot of people walking around, and here where I'm at, they're getting ready to serve a church lunch. So I'm sorry that we kind of got some distraction.
Kim, believe it or not, we didn't hear a bit of clanging, no soap suds, and hopefully your phone is still dry.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
all.
guys.
Yeah.